Thank you, Rob. Hey everyone, this is John Cassell, Senior Solutions Architect with Syxsense, and today I'll be going through third-party application updates released since last month's Patch Tuesday. First, Adobe dropped a number of updates across various products. Yesterday, Adobe issued advisories across 6 different product lines between Windows and macOS. These products include Animate, Bridge, Illustrator, InCopy, InDesign, and RoboHelp Server. Among all products, Adobe resolved 46 separate vulnerabilities, with most being critical in nature. Adobe Animate received an update to address only one out-of-bounds write bug with a CVSS score of 7.8, and if exploited, it could lead to arbitrary code execution. Adobe resolved 12 vulnerabilities in Bridge, with 11 being critical in nature and having CVSS scores of 7.8. These include out-of-bounds write, improper input validation, use after free flaws, and an out-of-bound read with instead important severity. Adobe Illustrator received an update to address 17 separate bugs, with 13 of them being critical in nature, and again CVSS scores of 7.8. These include similar out-of-bounds write, improper input validation, and use after free flaws, with the other 4 vulnerabilities being out-of-bounds read and having lower importance severity. InCopy and InDesign were both fixed for 15 separate flaws, all critical in nature, with scores of also 7.8, including heap-based buffer overflow, out-of-bounds read and write, and use after free issues. And lastly, a security hotfix dropped for RoboHelp Server to address a moderate severity flaw regarding improper authorization that, if exploited, could lead to privilege escalation. This flaw was given a CVSS score of 6.5. And across all Adobe products, the vendor did release a normal priority of 3, meaning that they are less likely for exploitation, but should still be prioritized given the quantity and critical nature of most of the flaws. Google Chrome has had 3 separate releases for Windows, macOS, and Linux since last month. The first update dropped May 12th, but fortunately nothing to highlight with regard to security. The second update, Chrome version 102, dropped on May 24th and instead resolved a disclosed 32 security fixes, with 1 being critical in nature. This critical vulnerability, tracked as CVE 2022-1853, is concerning a use after free flaw in indexed DB. It was reported on May 12th of this year. The second update, Chrome version 102, dropped on May 24th and resolved a disclosed 32 security fixes, with 1 being critical in nature. This critical vulnerability was tracked as CVE 2022-1853, concerning a use after free flaw in indexed DB, and it was reported on May 12th of this year. 8 additional flaws received high severity and included additional use after free flaws, as well as insufficient policy enforcement and out-of-bounds read. The rest of the disclosed fixes include inappropriate implementation in extensions and extensions API, insufficient validation of untrusted input and data transfer, type confusion in the V8 JavaScript engine, insufficient policy enforcement in various modules, and a heap-based buffer overflow flaw in DevTools. The third Chrome update dropped on June 9th, resolving a disclosed 7 security fixes. Of the 7 fixes, 4 disclosed were high severity and included resolution of use after free flaws in WebGPU and Angle, as well as out-of-bounds memory access in WebGL and out-of-bounds read and compositing. Fortunately for the last month, no new zero-day vulnerabilities were disclosed for the Chrome browser, which occurred 16 times last year, and this year they're only up to 3. I always mention that Chrome is by far the most popular web browser. Regarding updating Chrome, as always, the browser should auto-update for any consumers, but administrators do be sure to check and update accordingly, especially if any end users don't have administrative rights to their devices. Following suit, any vulnerabilities resolved in Chrome also affect other Chromium-based browsers, such as the popular Microsoft Edge. Edge received 4 updates since last month's webinar, with only 2 releases addressing Edge-specific vulnerabilities. The first, on May 31st, update of Edge resolved 3 additional vulnerabilities. The first is tracked as CVE 2022-26905, related to spoofing, has a lower CVSS score of 4.3, and exploitation is also less likely. The second and third vulnerabilities from the same release The second and third vulnerabilities resolved from the same release are tracked as CVE 2022-30127 and 30128, both related to elevation of privilege, both having a much higher CVSS score of 8.3, and for both exploitation is still less likely, according to Microsoft. This late May release also added 4 new policies for administrators, such as one of them enabling the network service sandbox. Microsoft then resolved additional product-specific vulnerabilities in its June 9th release to address one remote code execution flaw with a CVSS score of 8.3, and fortunately also less likely to be exploited. Given that some Edge-specific vulnerabilities are near critical, and the Chromium exploits mentioned earlier still apply, I do strongly recommend again to prioritize. Mozilla Firefox released 4 updates since last month, including 2 additional updates for extended support release users. Mozilla dropped 2 Firefox updates between May 16th and 20th, with the latter release, version 100.0.2, resolving 2 critical flaws. The first critical flaw is tracked as CVE 2022-1529, related to untrusted input used in JavaScript object indexing, leading to prototype pollution. Firefox release notes state, quote, an attacker could have sent a message to the parent process where the contents were used to double index into a JavaScript object, leading to prototype pollution and ultimately attacker-controlled JavaScript executing in the privileged parent process. The second flaw is tracked as CVE 2022-1802, related to prototype pollution and top-level await implementation. Their website also states that if an attacker was able to corrupt the methods of an array object in JavaScript via prototype pollution, they could have achieved execution of attacker-controlled JavaScript code in a privileged context. On May 31st, Mozilla dropped version 101 of Firefox to address various security flaws, including 8 separately disclosed high-severity issues across Firefox as well as Firefox ESR. These include heap-based buffer overflow, browser Windows spoofing, and register allocation problems. The last update on June 9th didn't resolve any security flaws, but did include some stability fixes across Windows, Linux, and macOS. Mozilla Thunderbird also received 2 updates since last month, versions 91.9.1 and 91.10, resolving the same critical and high-severity vulnerabilities mentioned within Firefox, since both share a common and similar codebase. Zoom, the widely popular video conferencing platform, received client updates on May 23rd and May 30th, with the former release resolving 4 high and medium severity vulnerabilities across various operating systems. Of the vulnerabilities, one of the vulnerabilities tracked as CVE 2022-22786 and related to update package downgrading affects the Zoom client for meetings for Windows and Zoom Rooms for conference rooms for Windows, while the rest affect the Zoom client for meetings on all desktop and mobile platforms. The other flaws are related to improper XML parsing, insufficient hostname validation, and improperly constrained session cookies. These were all actually discovered by Google's Project Zero and can be used by a malicious actor to compromise a Zoom user over chat without user interaction. Given the widespread use of the platform and no required interaction from the user, all users that are using Zoom should be sure to keep it up to date. Some additional products have also seen updates since last Patch Tuesday, and these include Atlassian Confluence Server and Data Center, Bitwarden, various Citrix products, Dropbox, Drupal, FileZilla, iTunes, Jenkins, Notepad++, Opera, Putty, RingCentral, Skype, Slack, Trend Micro, WebEx, and WordPress. My monthly reminder to all administrators, please include third-party patching in your patch deployment process. Any and all applications installed can be considered a potential vulnerability. Unfortunately for Apple users, many products did receive updates between May 16th and June 9th, 2022. These include various vulnerabilities. Stupid. These include iOS and iPadOS, resolving 33 flaws. These include iOS and iPadOS, resolving 33 flaws, tvOS with 28 flaws, watchOS with 21 fixes, macOS Catalina with 37, Monterey with a surprising 73 separately disclosed vulnerabilities, and Big Sur with 52. Safari for macOS Big Sur and Catalina users received 5 fixes, Xcode for macOS Monterey 12 and later with 2 exploits, as well as iTunes for Windows users, like mentioned earlier, resolving 5 flaws.